Wait there. There we go.
Sounds better.
All right, well, let's start again here. Welcome to today's Utah County Board of Commissioners meeting. We're grateful for your attendance with us this morning. To begin with, we'd like to begin our meetings with a prayer, reading, or thought, followed with the Pledge of Allegiance, and we typically look to our audience for volunteers to participate with us. Are there any who would be willing to offer a prayer, reading, or thought, or lead us in the pledge? Perfect, thank you. Someone for the pledge? Anyone for a prayer, reading, or thought? Not? Yes. Thank you. If you'd come to the podium and state your name, we'd appreciate that.
Our Heavenly Father, we're grateful for the opportunity we have to meet today. We are grateful for the freedoms that we enjoy and for the blessings of the opportunity to meet together and to feel an opportunity to counsel one with another. We're grateful for the opportunity we have to be able to speak, and pray that Thy Spirit will be with us and bless us, that we'll be able to have appropriate and thoughtful comments, that we will be able to express the concerns as well as the appreciation we have for those who have been given stewardship to assist in having peace and feelings of collaboration and cooperation one for another. These things we're grateful for, and say in the name of Thy Son, Jesus Christ. Amen.
Amen. Can we get your name for the public record, please?
His name is Jeff Sessions.
Thank you.
Cody Law, please join with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
We appreciate your participation with us this morning. We'll now move to an awards presentation in recognition of our Utah County Employee of the Month, and I believe Commissioner Lee has that recognition.
Yes. Will Cassie Patton come on up? You can just stand wherever you feel the most comfortable.
Okay, thank you.
And you'll get an opportunity after I read through this to say any words you like.
Okay, thank you.
So you can be thinking about that. All right. We, the Eagle Mountain crew, would like to nominate Cassie Patton from the Sheriff's Office for Employee of the Month. Cassie is employed by the Utah County Sheriff's Office as an Office Specialist 2 in the Eagle Mountain substation. We have worked with her for a while now, and any of the deputies, sergeants, and chief deputy can attest to the fact that she makes our office run smooth. Cassie has been working for the Sheriff's Office for about 6 years and has quickly become an excellent employee. Cassie knows her job, and without her, things would fall apart. Cassie interacts with the city offices constantly and is going between and is a go-between for nearly every event held in the city of Eagle Mountain. Cassie was working during the tragic event of Sergeant Ride when he was murdered while working in Eagle Mountain. Cassie has been a strength to the deputies during this time and maintained many of the office requirements, but was willing to go beyond and quietly perform her other duties and responsibilities without being asked to do so. The city of Eagle Mountain has a strong political area, and the contract with the city is highly valued by the Sheriff's Office. Cassie maintains a strong and positive connections with the city employees and keeps the deputies regularly informed about areas of concerns or needs. We have observed Cassie making contact with the citizens of Eagle Mountain, and she is always professional when dealing with the public and goes beyond what is required of her to provide the service that is exemplary for Utah County employee and the Sheriff's Office. We have had to make contact with Cassie when she is not working, and she has always been willing to assist with an issue or return a phone call with a simple question we may have for her. Cassie is at her desk on time and always sharply dressed and has a professional appearance when she is contacted by the public daily. When we have asked Cassie for assistance with projects, she is always willing to help and can usually have an answer to the problem quickly. We hope Cassie will have a long and successful career with Utah County, keeping Eagle Mountain office running at full steam. So thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you
Any
very
words?
much. Wow, that's a lot. I appreciate the deputies that I work with and the citizens, and it's an honor. Thank you very much.
That was written by those who work with you.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you. For you, and some goodies in there too, and if you want, just show, turn and smile, we'll take a picture.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We certainly appreciate your efforts. We'll now go through the process of continuing to build our agenda. In the process of doing so, all items will be considered moved to consent, meaning that they are approved or authorized unless held for further discussion. On our current consent agenda, we did have 7 items listed. Were there any of those 7 items that needed pulled from consent?
No.
All right, those all 7 will remain on consent. Moving to our regular agenda, including our closed meetings, we have 15 items. Regular agenda item number 1 will be held for discussion and a presentation. I did have no additional questions. However, in noting something from the audience, I would make a note on number 6, if we're not going to hold it, that this is a petition to remove that from, and if it moves to consent, that means we agree and that would be being removed from the ag protection area, just for public clarification. Any other items from the regular agenda?
Number 7, if we could hold that one,
Mhm.
and number 11, just for making sure clarification.
Okay. All right, we will hold numbers 7 and 11 to our regular agenda. All other items are moved to consent and considered approved or authorized.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Paul. Yes, number 5 as well,
Be held.
be held.
Okay. All right, we'll now move to regular agenda item number 1. This is a presentation of the 2017 Trust Accountability Program.
Thank you. My name is Doug Folsom. I am the Loss Prevention Manager for the Utah Local Governments Trust. The trust provides insurance products for Utah County. And in our loss control department, our function and purpose is to help our members not have losses, not to have claims on their liability insurance, which of course, will incur costs down the road and have great impacts on your county operations and budgets. So the Trust Accountability Program Award is designed to help members implement best practices for risk management and loss prevention. And this program has several parts to it. And when members complete all of the required elements of the TAP program, they receive the TAP award. There's certain benefits to this. There's a cash award that the county receives for completing the TAP program every year, as well as discounting that's made available on your insurance premiums. And we have a presentation piece also that I brought with me today for the county in recognition of completion of the TAP program for 2017. This is really a valuable program. We have found over the years, we've been doing this for about 5 years now, that we have had great success in controlling losses and driving down the frequency of certain types of expensive losses. And we appreciate Utah County's dedication to implementing all of these best practices, from safety programs and safety committee and incident reviews to driver monitoring programs to make sure we have safe drivers behind the wheel, getting employees back to work as soon as possible after injuries and so forth. And it's not an easy program to comply with, but Utah County has been a great partner in these areas, and we look forward to continually working with you and helping to improve this. Going forward in the future, not only do we have the discounts that are associated with the TAP program, but we also have additional underwriting advantages that we're going to be tying to the completion and the quality of the completion of these TAP elements. And so, again, congratulations to staff, especially those involved in the safety programs, the Risk Management Committee, Incident Review Board specifically, but every department plays a part and a role in this, and we also appreciate the commissioners for their support of staff in their safety programs. So congratulations and thank you.
And
Thank you.
do you know how many of those we have in a row? Because I know we got a bunch of them upstairs.
I believe this is 3.
3? Okay.
So at 3, that maximizes the discount that you get on workers' compensation. So that gives you almost an extra 5% discount on your workers' comp premiums, and that will continue as long as the program is completed every year consecutively. So thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Perfect.
Thanks a bunch.
Thank you. Thanks, Steph. You bet. Oh, you want pictures?
Where he wants to.
Pictures.
Thank you, and I know we greatly appreciate working with the trust. We'll now move to regular agenda item number 5. This is to approve property tax actions contained in the recommendation letter number 2018-10.
Great. Paul Jones from the County Attorney's Office. Commissioner Lee asked this one to be pulled from last week to this week. We had a conversation. I wasn't sure what direction you wanted to take. That's why I flagged you down this morning. But this is a situation where, again, the tax notices were not being, the taxpayer claims that the tax notices were not being received because the address on the deed was accidentally incorrect. It was a 5534 address when they actually live at 5334.
Then what's to debate if there's an error?
Well,
My recommendation was to deny the request because the error was not
Yeah.
our fault. It was the taxpayer and possibly their title company's error. And Commissioner Lee sounded like maybe he wanted to take a different direction.
well, I did a lot more research on this.
Oh, okay.
In talking with Paul, I was actually fine leaving it on consent with
Okay.
with your actions, but maybe it might be good to just kind of explain the process that I went through with it. So I went up to Bert's office as well to see how they go through this process for the last 5 years, because they had been paying taxes for the last 5 years. And part of it was, as it appeared, that the property owner paid off a mortgage, and so as the mortgage was satisfied, then of course the property owner has to, on their own, pay the property taxes. You don't have your bank or so forth do that. He explained to me how he goes through and sends out these notifications on a yearly basis, and if they come back from the post office as being undeliverable in any respect, then he tags them in. So for the past 5 years, none of those had come back undeliverable. And the one that actually we sent out as the notice of sale came back as, well, it was delivered because now there was a request to go ahead and pay the taxes off so that the tax property wouldn't go into the notice. So as I looked down through that and saw, even with the incorrect address that was on there, a pretty strong history of those notices being seen and And of course, for 5 years, not paying taxes is always problematic at some point in time. I don't know how you think you don't pay taxes for 5 years. I was comfortable that the county has done everything it can, and it wasn't just a little minor thing that had happened and they came in to change it. And as I understand now, the address has been changed to the correct address going forward. But in looking at the past with that and seeing what was going on, I felt comfortable with the decision from
Okay,
from Paul's office. That's the reason why I didn't really circle it.
Okay.
perfect. All right, given that, I will entertain a motion for number 5.
Move that we approve the property tax actions as contained in number 5.
A second?
I have a motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 5. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion will carry 3-0. We'll now move to regular agenda item number 7. This is dealing with the Powerhouse Subdivision Plat A. Brandon Larson, staff on this. Commissioner Lee, you had a question?
Well, I believe that it's required of us to make some findings and good cause and so forth in this action. And that's the reason why I pulled it off, so it wasn't on consent, just to go through without the findings and causes. Would you maybe articulate to us some of the findings of good cause for both the request for extension of approval time and also the extension of time to construct the required improvements?
Right.
What would be those?
So the approval is going to expire next week, and from the time that you approved it a year ago till now, they've had time to complete the improvements. There were power improvements, as I recall, and some irrigation and drainage improvements. They have completed almost all of the improvements except for the irrigation improvements. They decided to change the irrigation plan, and so they have now submitted a new irrigation plan and are installing pressurized irrigation system, which is a better system than perhaps what they would have installed originally. So it sounds like they're almost done. It sounds like they may actually complete this before their expiration,
I see.
before the approval expires, but we just wanted to be safe and make sure their approval didn't
So
expire.
it sounds from that one of the findings that we could have in there is they were improving it from the original request, and so there's going to be more time needed possibly.
Possibly.
Okay?
Yep. I think you could make a finding of a benefit of an improved irrigation system. There were obviously some changes that had to occur, new plans and things that had to be updated to facilitate that new irrigation system. So, and again, this isn't just an extension of the approval viability period. It's also an extension of the time for them to construct improvements. So,
Right.
for a period of 60. The reason why it was 61 was to make it on a Monday instead of a Sunday. So.
Yeah. That's good enough for me.
Okay, I'll entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that we approve number 7 with the findings that the extension of time will actually improve the project, as stated by Brandon in his statements there.
Second.
Motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 7 with findings. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion will carry 3-0. Next, we have regular agenda item number 11. This is a resolution regarding Pleasant Grove City's notice of intent to submit an opinion question regarding the imposition of a RAP tax.
Yeah, and the only reason why I had this held, I just wanted to make sure it's understood that this resolution has nothing to do with, and as it's stated in the resolution, I'm just reaffirming it, has nothing to do with our support or not support for this RAP tax. It's basically stating that we are not going to impose the same tax in the same. That's what this resolution is. And that it, we call it a RAP tax. It's called different names, but anyway, the RAP tax, the Recreational Arts and Parks tax. And I just wanted to make sure and just state that for us that we are not doing the same thing and jumping on it with it. I just want to say that.
Perfect. Thank you for the clarification. I'll entertain a motion.
I'll move that we adopt the resolution as stated in number 11.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to adopt the resolution stated in regular agenda item number 11. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion will carry 3-0. I'll now look to set our closed meetings. We do not need 12 or 13. We do need 14 and 15.
Motion to strike 12 and 13.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to strike regular agenda items number 12 and 13. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. That will carry 3-0.
I'll move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting to discuss the character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual or individuals for today's date at this location following the completion of regular agenda and work session items.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 14. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, carries 3-0.
I'll move that we approve and set a date, time, and location for a closed meeting for a strategy session to discuss pending or reasonably imminent litigation for today's date at this location following completion of regular agenda and work session items.
Second?
I have a motion and a second to approve regular agenda item number 15. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye, motion will carry 3-0. We'll now move to our work session, where we have a kind of a presentation and discussion on some legislation that was passed this year by the state legislators regarding a diesel emissions program.
Thank you, Commissioners. Ralph Clegg with the Health Department. I'm going to invite Scott Burton from our staff and Steve Alder from our staff to come up, who are kind of the experts on this, but I'll introduce it and then they can answer any questions for you. This last session, the legislature passed House Bill 101, which required diesel emissions testing here in Utah County. I think the commission worked closely with the sponsor on that to get that into place. And so the first thing that we're going to need in order to do that will be an ordinance adopted, or an ordinance amendment adopted by the county commission to implement that so that we can get the computer software in place at the stations. Be some reprogramming that will be required for that. And then we have to make sure that we get all the changes to the State Tax Commission for vehicle registration so that they implement it properly as well. And then we need time to train about 600 mechanics on how to do that testing. And so that's why we're approaching this now. It's supposed to be implemented January 1st, and we just need the time to put all those things into place. So I think the materials that were presented to you kind of went through what was required in the law by line and our proposal for how to implement that. So if you have questions now, I'll let Steve and Scott step up to the podium and address those for you.
I don't know, I have a lot of questions. I would guess that the biggest direction I'd have is just to make sure in the crafting our ordinance that it's reiterated that there is a sunset on this particular piece of legislation. It was, if I remember correct, 3 years. So we'll want to make sure that's reflected in the ordinance so that it's consistent. This is a 3-year process, and the exemption of newer vehicles as outlined in the law would obviously want to carry over into our ordinance. So there's consistency there, exempting out new vehicles that already come under federal compliance because of federal regulation.
Yeah, I mean, we will comply with the state statute, and so, I mean, we want to mirror that as closely as possible with it, and then, I think it'd be great, just work through it.
There you go.
Any questions that you have for us that you see as sticking points? Or concerns of how to work through this?
Not necessarily directly related to, this is Steve Alder, the diesel program itself, but just to make the commission aware that we have seen an increase in test fees for emissions inspections, particularly since the safety program went away. And so we just wanted to make a comment or make you aware as a commission that find out your feelings, your feedback on as to whether you want to consider something like a cap on those inspection fees, or if we want to continue to be market-based, or however you'd like to proceed in that regard. Just so that if you do have feedback or instruction in that regard, we can implement that perhaps in this new diesel ordinance while we're crafting it.
I would be curious to see what those changes are looking like, and
Yeah,
Yes.
cost of the test, things like that, so we know.
Right.
'Cause
We could probably run something, Steve, couldn't we, to show what the average test cost has gone up.
Yeah, we can present that or create that information.
I mean, because it's kind of an interesting dynamic, because you had a government regulation enabling people to make a lot of money, and then the government deregulated, so.
And increase.
just, and increased it, so is there a need for us to now step in and say, wait, you can't? I don't, it's an interesting quandrum there, but I'd like to see what the numbers actually are.
Dynamic, yeah, it's just, like I said, that it's interesting that a fee has gone up for something, it appears in some ways to compensate for lost revenue from a program that went away, but.
I saw that when I went in just recently.
Yeah.
So that now brings up a question for me. In the sense of the fees and where the test is performed, if you're registering it here in Utah County, do you have to get it tested here in Utah County, or can it go anywhere?
They should, the vehicles can be tested in any of the reciprocating or adjacent counties that have a vehicle emissions program.
Right.
We've done that to try to create some consistency and convenience. So for people, for example, who work in Salt Lake, they can have an emissions test done there rather than having to schedule that here.
So in looking at fees, then, there's gonna be some sort of consistency if we put caps or anything on there to be consistent with our neighbors, or else it starts this interesting
And
dynamic
there,
of
yeah,
back
there
and
is some
forth.
variability. There are a couple of the counties, for example, that have capped fees, and the others that are market-based like we are currently, so.
Or we can
we
keep
can
our
provide
fees
you that
lower, and then
information.
everyone will come here.
That's a possibility.
We'll start a trade war.
Start a trade war with Salt Lake.
One thing to note in the diesel testing proposal is we did put in, kind of a one-time waiver if they've tampered with their vehicle, to give them a year to get that taken care of, just to soften the blow a little bit.
Like the one
So
that was driving down Springville Main Street today that I followed.
could have been.
They'll need that year.
So I give them a year to kind of take care of it, because, if they've tampered with it extensively, it could be some expensive repairs, or maybe they want to sell it to a non-testing area.
That would be one I'd be interested in, because my initial reaction to that is that's probably too long
Too long for a year.
for me. Because those are the ones I have a problem with.
Yeah.
Yeah, we don't even have
I
to
mean,
put it in if you don't want it in.
They've gone out of their way to.
To deliberately pollute, and
Yeah.
so those are the ones that I actually have a problem with.
Okay.
The reason I hated this law in the first place is because it hurts 98% of us who are out there maintaining our
Compliant.
vehicles and, doing a good job, and now we have to prove to the government we're doing a good job. But there's that small percentage that are out there tampering that are wrecking it.
With that
and-
feedback, we'll propose it that way.
And so for me, I would, if you're gonna deliberately pollute and modify your vehicle, I don't have a problem with you facing the ramifications of that myself,
I'm with you.
They still have 6 months
Yeah.
from now.
from now.
Right.
So know that it's coming and get it fixed now.
If I could just make one other comment, that the other concern, just thought that we have is with the first 5 model years being exempted, the other thing that we see, or that we think we're seeing, is that lots of times people will purchase a relatively new vehicle and then go straight through the process of tampering with that vehicle. And so with the way this bill is written, that doesn't allow us to intervene in any regard in that way, but we can deal with that when they have their
Hopefully,
first test.
what the public will realize on that, and you're right, you can't stop, right? And again, like Commissioner Ivy said, the unfortunate part is they're now crafting law for the 1 or 2% that choose to hurt everybody. Hopefully, people will realize that and realize, okay, now everybody's watching. The more they start doing that, they'll quit exempting 5 years and they'll start doing it to everybody, and that's unfortunate.
And if there's a place in our ordinance that we could tighten up our visual or enhance our enforcement capacity for vehicles that are obvious, that would be something to me that would be notable to say, even on these newer vehicles, is there some type of reporting mechanism or something that enables us to get after those guys a little more?
For the commission's information, we have really pursued that a lot more heavily the last couple of years. We're also creating a statewide smoking vehicle hotline so that it's reciprocal throughout the state and can be shared more easily with other jurisdictions.
Out of curiosity's sake, because we do have several counties that border us that come here to shop frequently, what would be the rule on someone from a bordering county without emissions testing that has a modified vehicle? If they're in Utah County,
If they're
How would-
reported and they're reported by law enforcement and/or health department or county employees, it moves it to a level 1 category right out of the cage, which then allows us to report that to the state, and we can request that their renewal registration be denied until that vehicle is tested.
Interesting. Yeah, I was just, it's just curious because that's that's a little challenging, right? Because if it's not illegal where you live, but I have a vehicle that I can't drive in California because it's not a clean idle semi, but I can drive it here, so it makes it tricky.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, with that, we will move to any public comment. Seeing no general public comment, we will, yes.
Morning, Commission. My name's Scott Scovell. I live in Lehigh, and I'm addressing item number 6 that you put on the consent calendar. I am a retired district attorney, a resident of 613 West Parkview, which is less than, a quarter mile from the Dixon Ranch. I had sent a letter to the advisory board on November 11th, pointing out some of the criteria that were necessary with regards to the creation of recommendation. I know that those items are moved because they've withdrawn their APA. However, for us as residents, there's still many concerns that are relevant to the issue of the Dixon Farm that I'd like to raise with you. Our obvious concerns regarding the county's responsibility to comply with the mandate to promote the health, safety, and welfare of its citizens, as you know, as you've been charged to do so. With regards to a couple of those sections, I'd like to point out to you some of the pressing issues and hopefully seek some guidance as to what would be the next steps related to that, so that we as residents can know what to do moving forward now that the APA has been removed, or they're not seeking renewal of that, but also to know what we can do in the future going forward. In particular, with regards to subsection G, which talks about lessen congestion and traffic hazards. As you know, for the past 20 years, pretty much the county and the city has taken a hands-off approach with that area with regards to the Dixon Farm. In the meantime, the general plan, as you are fully aware, has approved substantial growth with residential homes and also with the development of Silicon Slopes. We've got a high school that's nearby, we've got elementary schools that are nearby, and all of those, that streets, 3200 North and 300 West, intersect right with the Dixon Farm. But in that, we don't have streets, that have been properly, constructed. We don't have sidewalks. They end right at the south portion of the Dixon Farm and the west portion of the Dixon Farm. Insufficient lighting. And so our concern, one of those concerns, is with regards to what are the next steps with regards to what the commission is going to do or what the county is going to do. What can we as residents expect will happen in light of that? And so that was one of the questions I had. I had photos if you were interested as to what it looks like in that area. But as you can see that you've got a sidewalk on this on 300 West, and then the sidewalk just ends on the south portion of the Dixon
So in
farm.
other words, it goes from city to county property.
Yeah, yes it does, yeah.
We have great road standards, don't we?
Yeah, and then as you've got here on 3200 North, you've got a trail which is part of the branch of the Murdoch Trail that just dies right there at 3200 North. I've got ones for each of you if you'd like. But I think that that's something that we as residents are concerned about, is what are the next steps with regards to that. Also with subsection I and J, with regards to promoting more attractive and wholesome environment, create conditions favorable for prosperity, recreation, educational. You're fully aware, I would assume that you know, that many residents who attended the last meeting you know, when this process started, and I think part of the reason we don't have the attendance today is because this kind of snuck up on us with only 1 week, and pretty much if we hadn't gotten notice just by public hearing by way of the fact that Mr. Bauer, Chris gets notifications, we wouldn't even have known that this was actually on the agenda today. But there is a failure to properly dispose of mink waste on behalf of Dixon Farm, which is, as the complaints that we've had, has created a substantial fly and foul odor problem for residents and for the enjoyment of the parks and those type of areas in the splash pad. It's interesting for your information that since April, the odor and the fly problem has been substantially decreased. But prior to that, we were still having those problems. This same time last year and previous years, we would already have a substantial fly problem and an odor problem. And right now, we don't have that problem. So Dixon's Farm's doing something different. And our question and concern is, what is it they're doing? If they now are implementing best practices, how do we ensure that they'll continue to implement those best practices? And if they don't, what are our remedies and our recourses in order to ensure that they will? Clearly in the past, because they've had the APA, we've been reluctant, and because they had the protection, they had nuisance protections also. Now that those are lifted, we want to make sure that we're a good neighbor, but we want them to be a good neighbor also, in making sure that they comply with best practices, that they're disposing of their waste in an appropriate manner. And so those are some of the concerns that we have with regards to that, so that we can ensure that we enjoy our property just as much as Mr. Dixon will. So therefore, I would request that there be some means by which the commission or its representatives can have oversight, or we know the means by which there is oversight to ensure that the Dixons implement best practices and are in compliance with county and city ordinances, that we get the development of the streets and the sidewalks, that reasonable methods are available for meritorious nuisance claims, assuming Dixon's fail to comply. So I appreciate your time, and those are our concerns, some of the concerns that we have, and Chris has some more concerns.
I wonder if my memory serves me correct, I think we got the application just last week, right?
You got on the 29th, yeah.
And then it's on our agenda today, and we're acting on it fast, and so, I mean, you're saying that you didn't have enough time, notification. We just barely got the notification last week as well.
No,
so, I mean, we can only move as fast as we have notifications.
I think that part of our concern is that we've, you know, there's been substantial emails that have gone with regards to this concern, but no response back from the county with regards to this coming also. Maybe as a courtesy, we know the public hearing standpoint, but those are some of our concerns from that standpoint. Because I believe that we would definitely have had more citizens here indicating that we're not opposed to the removal, but we're concerned about the next steps related to that. We remove it, and then our concern is the county done, and then we're back to where we were before.
So I have a different spin on this a little bit. And I hear your concerns, and I mean, they are concerning. However, I look at this, and when we say not proper notice, the action that all the residents showed up to the commission about was what? To stop the agricultural protection renewal, right? So with all due respect, that's what happened today. So they the first step of the process is what has already happened. So that has happened. When we talked about putting that through the process, I alluded to some emails that I'd received. And one of those alluded to how Dixon, and you actually said it in your comments, we didn't have this odor problem, then the last couple of years something happened, and now I'm glad to hear they didn't, because that was something I said I would hope that they would become a good neighbor. I think it's important to understand the commission didn't ask them to pull this. Dixon's trying to be a good neighbor. It sounds like he's cleaning it up. So I'm hoping those steps, and this is a step moving forward by him or her or whoever's in charge, I don't know them at all, to do just that, to be a good neighbor, to eliminate the flies and do those things. That's my hope, because otherwise you're right. The nuisance and everything, the county, there are ordinances that we have, and those things have to take place. But by your own admission, if the flies have decreased and the odors are gone, sounds like they're complying. I hope that continues.
And I think it's because they were under, at least my opinion, is that they knew that they'd be reviewed by an advisory agricultural committee and a planning commission, and
and I
that
have no
was
doubt-
our position for being
And
here.
that may or may not be the
So,
case. I just
yeah.
hope they continue to do the good job they're doing
Absolutely.
right now and be a good neighbor and do the farming the way it's meant to be.
I would
the
love
best
that,
possible.
but also want to know as a citizen and a resident, if they fail to do so, what is it that
You
the
call
county
either
would
the
do?
health department
So-
or you call Public Works. Do you guys do anything for the roadway? Never mind. So that,
Because it's
So.
yeah.
the road, yes, but
Yeah.
on sidewalks.
Chris
But the health
Sauerbank
department, so.
has comments too. Thank you for your time. I appreciate
you.
it.
Good morning, Commissioners. Chris Bowerbank, Lehigh resident. Likewise, we don't oppose the petition to remove the APA. That's not what this has been about. We want to be candid with our motivations is,
We have to have the door open.
Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
we want to be candid that throughout this entire process, we've been focused on the abatement of what we feel have been zoning violations and ensuring compliance with agricultural best practices. We've talked about that, at length in previous meetings. And specifically best practices for these intensive livestock operations under which the original variance was granted. We don't know the motivation behind the petition. One likely is that they felt that the APA would not be renewed because of precedent set back in 1999 with the McLaughlin Mink Farm in Lehigh, where the APA was denied. Back then, Deputy County Attorney Kent Sundberg stated that the applicant must meet all health regulations and should follow standard agricultural practices. But then Commissioner Gardner moved to deny the McLaughlin application for protection because the problems have been chronic and persistent. And has been our experience specifically over the last 4 or 5 years. And then Commissioner Herbert then stated, my concern is in 3 areas: zoning violation, business license, and health regulations. And it's the zoning violation area that I want to talk about just a minute. Back on August 7th of 2015, a local resident, Amy Theobald, submitted a land use ordinance violation report to the Community Development Division or Department. They came out along with the Environmental Health Division of Utah County, and one of their findings was this: complaint number 4, additional structures. In the future, if there is a desire to construct additional mink sheds or other structures, an appropriate permit issued from the Community Development Office is required. All structures will need to meet all requirements of the agricultural protection area. And this is quote, I will be sending the owners of the mink ranch a letter giving them instructions of this requirement. So basically they went out and noticed that there had been building violations. A letter supposedly was sent to Dane Dixon Mink Ranch LLC, informing him of this process. So that was in August of 2015. If you look at, so we did a grammar request for building permit applications by the ranch. And the only thing that came back were 3 permits, one issued in 1973, one issued in 1974, and one issued in 1986 for that parcel, okay? Since that time, if you look at the 2018 property tax year property report, he has built at least 5 sun shelters or mink sheds, as well as a farm utility building without a permit since that inspection in 2015. So what we see is a pattern of defiance to local zoning. It expanded operations without county oversight, which would have happened had he submitted a permit. Also, we know in the statute that there's agricultural structure exemptions, But in order to receive one of those, you need to apply. And there have been, to our knowledge, there have been no record of any exemptions being applied for. And so this pattern of nonconformance is what concerns us, as Scott had mentioned. So with this APA removed, if there are zoning violations, now what? How do we as citizens have an assurance that he's going to continue these agricultural best practices, that he's going to continue to be in conformance with the RA5 zoning, which is what that land is zoned for? Another example, so Don Hall from the State Division of Water Quality and Jay Olson from the Utah Department of Ag and Food inspected the farm recently and said the farm has incorporated some composted manure into the soil in front of the property. This is not a good practice for non-cropland, okay? He said, Mr. Dixon said he wasn't going to incorporate manure into the soil in the future. That's a verbal promise. How do we ensure that that happens? We have no assurance or guarantee that that will, based on his prior history. In regards to the RA5 zoning, we've reviewed that, and there are a number of violations or potential violations that we feel like need to be looked at and addressed, and we'll be submitting those to the Community Development Department to look at. And the other thing is the transparency. Commissioner Ivey has talked at length about the need to adhere to agricultural best practices. We asked in a previous meeting, does the county have a standard for intensive livestock operations? The county attorney or deputy county attorney said that you did not have those. So my question is, do you have those now? What standard are you holding these intensive livestock operations to? They go out and inspect and say, it appears that they're adhering to these standards. Well, what is that standard? Where is it enumerated? What are they comparing it to? Is somebody from the health department, are they an expert in intensive livestock operation hygiene and operation? Where is it enumerated in the county code or county statutes? Utah County, up to this point, you've relied on the mink farming community to be self-regulating. And in our experience, that has not been effective. So, we're well aware of the various issues. This is what we request, is that the county establish a standard. Now, it could be based on the Fur Commission's standards, but it should be reviewed and vetted by county experts in this area and have an enumerated standard. We feel like the Ag Advisory Board ought to still conduct a full review of the Dane Dixon Mink Ranch to evaluate compliance with all standard agricultural practices, not the health department, but the Ag Advisory Board. And then we also feel like either the Community Development Group or Department or the Planning Commission ought to conduct a full review of compliance with the RA5 zoning and determine if there are violations, which, based on our grammar request, based on the current buildings that are there, we feel like there is likely violations, and those should be addressed according to the law. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment? Seeing none, we will thank you for your attendance and your comments today and move into our closed meetings.